It's hard to forget the image. Cherry blossom petals dancing on a spring morning. But even more unforgettable is what happened that day at the Rehabilitation Center. The security cameras captured it all, but no technology can truly explain the miracle. I've spent years studying primates, but Kesi's story, it's different. It's proof that love knows no boundaries. I remember reading about Kesi for the first time, a white gorilla who seemed to unlock a lock with his own hands, defying expectations. But understanding that moment means understanding his past. He was a genetically modified infant, his very existence engineered to be a spectacle, a manufactured rarity designed for profit. Emma Carter, who dedicated 42 years to working with primates, experienced a turning point the night she raided that laboratory. The year was 2006, and the whispers of controversial genetic experiments were growing louder. Emma, working for an animal rights organization, had been watching a suspicious laboratory for months. Finally, she managed to get inside. What she found shook her to her core. In a small cage, amidst the cold, sterile environment, lay a gorilla infant with fur as white as snow. Unlike the other gorillas in the surrounding cages, this infant seemed to defy nature itself. Looking at the files, Emma discovered the truth. This wasn't an albino gorilla. This was the result of deliberate genetic intervention. This ritual was sacred for Emma because those moments were a time for a silent conversation they both shared. Emma taught Kesi simple things: how to peel fruit, how to play games, even how to open a simple lock. She had shown him this last skill as a fun activity: a metal lock, small buttons turned in the right sequence. Kesi thought it was a game, but it was one of the most important gifts Emma had given him: the ability to understand the idea of freedom. Years passed. When Kesi turned 10, he was already over 200 kilo. His white fur glowed in the sunlight, while his amber eyes carried deep wisdom. Emma could no longer keep him at home. It would be dangerous and wrong. But the solution she found was the best for him. The local Rehabilitation Center agreed to accept Kesi. This was a professional facility designed for injured animals in need of protection, with large areas. Kesi would be safe there, cared for by experts, and able to move freely. The day she took him there, Emma felt something tear inside her. Kesi looked at her, and there was an understanding in those big eyes, as if he knew, as if he understood that Emma thought this was best for him. As she left him, Emma stroked his head one last time, whispered in his ear one last time, "I will always love you, Kesi. You're my son." And Kesi touched Emma's face one last time. Those giant fingers touched hers, as if making a promise that he would never forget her. After that day, Emma visited him every week. According to the center's rules, she couldn't make direct contact, but just watching him from behind the bars was enough. Every time Kesi saw her, he would stand up, place his hands on the bars, and look at her. It was as if he was speaking, as if saying, "Mom, you're here. Everything is..." Time was merciless, especially toward Emma. When she reached 65, I remember reading about Emma's story and being struck by the cruelty of it all. Her body began to betray her. The strength in her legs diminished, her hands trembled, and the doctors diagnosed her with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, motor neuron disease. Within a year, she could no longer walk and was confined to a wheelchair. Her speech became difficult. each word an effort. But her mind remained sharp, her feelings deep. That was the most painful part. Understanding everything, feeling everything, yet unable to fully express it. Visiting Kesi became impossible. Her health simply wouldn't allow it. Months passed without seeing him, and the absence consumed her. She knew her time was running out, and she desperately wanted to see him one last time. Her sister, Sarah, understanding the gravity of the situation, devised a plan. She contacted the Rehabilitation Center, secured special permission, and one spring morning, on a day when cherry blossoms danced in the air, she wheeled Emma to the center. As they made their way through the main path, people cast pitying glances, but Emma noticed none of them. Her attention was fixed on a distant figure in a large outdoor area, Kesi, standing like a white giant. Sarah slowly pushed the wheelchair toward the garden. The spring sun warmed Emma's face. Cherry blossoms landed in her hair, but she only wanted to see him. Kesi, her son. They stopped just before the bars. Kesi was sitting on a large rock, his back turned. Emma tried to call out to him, but only rasping sounds escaped her lips. Tears streamed down her face. To be so close and yet unable to see him was unbearable. Sarah touched her shoulder. "Let me call him," she whispered. But at that moment, as if by a miracle, Kesi turned his head. Perhaps he felt the vibration of her sounds, or maybe instinct whispered something to him. His amber eyes locked onto Emma. In that moment, the world fell silent. There was only the woman and the gorilla, mother and son, reunited after years. Kesi slowly stood up. His massive body, over 200 kilograms, moved with a strange grace. Each step toward the bars was purposeful. He remembered her. When he reached the bars, he stopped, gripping the metal, his head bowed, his eyes fixed on Emma. Then he made a sound, deep and human-like, as if in pain. One of those characteristic sounds gorillas make when they're sad. Sarah brought the chair closer. Now only a meter separated them. The bars were the only obstacle. Emma tried to reach out with her trembling hand, but she lacked the strength. He only looked at Emma, and with slow, careful steps, as if approaching something breakable, he moved toward her. Sarah froze behind the chair, unable to move. Emma tried to signal with her hand, struggling to say, "Let him." Sarah didn't understand. "What?" Emma repeated. "Let him." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to leave her sister alone with this giant animal. But seeing the determination in Emma's eyes, she slowly backed away. One of the security team members shouted, "No, get away from there. This is very dangerous." I've spent years studying animal behavior, but what I witnessed that day, it was beyond anything I could have imagined. It was a meeting of two souls, a mother and son's farewell after years apart. A gorilla named Kesi, so gentle despite his size, and a woman named Emma, connected by a bond that defied species, time, and distance. Sarah, ever watchful, had cautioned everyone to wait. Kesi, a massive figure, stood before Emma, sunlight haloing his white fur. Slowly, deliberately, he crouched down until their faces were nearly level. His giant hand reached out, his fingers so gently touching Emma's face, like caressing a child. He picked a cherry blossom petal from her hair, examined it with immense care, and placed it on the ground. Then he rested his huge head on her knees. Everyone froze. Security, visitors, staff. We all watched, hardly breathing. It wasn't just animal behavior we were witnessing. Emma raised a trembling hand, feeling the warm, soft fur of Kesi's head. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of gratitude, of thankfulness. Kesi made a soft, almost human-like whimpering sound, the kind gorillas make only in moments of deep emotion. It sounded almost like he was saying, "Mum, you're here. I missed you. I never forgot you." Then Emma spoke, her words difficult but filled with love. "I love you, Kesi." Kesi, lifting his head slightly, looked at her. His amber eyes held no tears, but there was an understanding, an acceptance, as if he knew her time was short. He reached for the wheelchair armrest, carefully examining the metal edges, and then placed his hand on hers. In that moment, with cherry blossoms falling around them, Emma realized Kesi was being careful not to hurt her. His movements were calculated, controlled, because he knew she was fragile and he wanted to protect her. Minutes drifted by. The security teams lowered their weapons. It was clear. This wasn't a threat. This was love. Dr. Alan Thompson, the center's director, stepped forward. His eyes welled up. "The most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed," he said, his voice trembling. "This is something even science can't explain." Sarah was crying, and so were many of the visitors. We all understood that this was more than just a woman and a gorilla. It was a universal bond, the bond between mother and child. Kesi slowly lifted his head, looked at Emma one last time, and wiped the tears from her eyes with his finger. The gesture was so human, so compassionate and protective. Emma wanted to express everything she felt, but words weren't enough. Kesi seemed to understand. "You are my son," she said, with her last strength. Kesi rested his head on her knees again. They both seemed to know this wasn't a goodbye, but a moment of gratitude for the gift they had been given. As the sun rose higher, Kesi remained by Emma's side. Eventually, Dr. Thompson approached with a basket of Kesi's favorite fruits. "Kesi," he said softly, "come on, buddy. Let Emma rest." Kesi looked at the doctor, then back at Emma, hesitation in his eyes, as if he knew he would never see her again. And perhaps he was right. Emma, with a final burst of strength, gently pushed him away. "Go," she whispered. "Be well." Kesi placed his giant hand on Emma's hand one last time, holding it tightly as if to transfer all his love, then slowly stood up. His eyes remained fixed on her. He took a few steps back, then stopped, turned around, and looked at Emma one last time. In that look was everything: gratitude, love, farewell, and a silent promise that he would never forget her. Dr. Thompson guided Kesi back inside. Kesi wasn't interested in the fruit. He only looked back at Emma, his head turned, his eyes never leaving her. When the door closed, he stood there, leaning against the bars, motionless and silent, just watching Emma. Sarah moved behind the wheelchair. "Should we go?" she asked, her voice still trembling. Emma nodded slightly. It was time, but something wasn't breaking inside her. I've always been moved by stories of connection that defy the boundaries we often take for granted. This one, about a gorilla named Kesi and a woman named Emma, is one of the most profound I've encountered. It speaks of a bond so deep, so pure, that it transcended species, language, and even life itself. It reminds me that love, in its truest form, knows no limits. The day Kesi left Emma's care, it was a real farewell. They both knew it. As the chair turned, Kesi made a sound, a long, pain-filled call, the kind gorillas make only in very special situations, like a mother's or a son's call. People silently made way as they moved toward the center's exit, still under the influence of that moment. Some were crying. Some were just looking in shock because what they had just seen wasn't normal animal behavior. It felt like a miracle. When they got home, Sarah made tea for Emma, but she couldn't drink it. She felt empty inside, as if a part of her had stayed there with Kesi. That night, Emma lay in her bed, looked at the ceiling, and thought of the night she first saw Kesi, that tiny white infant, and how she had taken him in her arms. She had made a promise then. "I will protect you. I will love you." And she had kept her promise, every day, every moment, doing what was best for him. Days passed, then weeks. Sarah brought her news of Kesi, saying he was doing well. But there was something Sarah didn't say. Kesi came to the bars every evening at sunset, looking at the last place Emma had stood. 2 months later, Emma woke up one morning having trouble breathing. The disease had progressed. Sarah called the ambulance, but Emma refused. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She wanted to be at home, in peace. That night, as she lay in her bed, she looked out the window. The moon was full, and white light filtered into the room. At that moment, a strange feeling overcame her, as if Kesi were beside her, as if that giant hand were touching hers again. She closed her eyes and imagined Kesi, his white fur, his amber eyes, his giant but gentle hands. She imagined that last perfect day, when cherry blossoms danced in the air, when the sun illuminated everything. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for letting me love you, Kesi." And that night, Emma fell asleep in peace. The next morning, Sarah couldn't wake her. Emma was gone, but there was a smile on her face, a peaceful, happy expression, as if she had seen a beautiful dream. When Dr. Thompson received the news, he cried. Emma had not only saved an animal's life, but had given him a loving, meaningful life. How would they tell Kesi? And you could see cherry blossom petals dancing in the wind, even though it wasn't the season, as if Emma and Kesi were somehow still showing their love. I've always been moved by stories of connection that defy the odds. The idea that two souls, seemingly disparate, could find solace and strength in each other is, to me, profoundly beautiful. It's a testament to the human capacity for empathy, for seeing beyond the surface. And to think, after all they endured, they were together